Shirley here with Sirius Taurus Moon, Jupiter Hour, Mercury Day, Venus and Jupiter in Leo. Milliseconds before Ketu ingresses to Leo. Now, Sun in Cancer, Moon 22 in Aries, and particularly with the Sun in Cancer. Everything that goes through Leo goes through matters of the heart. And Leo is also leaders, and Leo is also then Magha is also the Epstein dossiers. Ken, okay. Now, just by this one liner or pitch, it shows how complicated and intricate, because what matters of the heart of, let's say, rapists. Okay, sexual boundary violation disconnects us from the heart. And making it a culture, which was the topic with Magha, to enable an extortion cult, they had to make it a culture and make it to make it almost legal, and play on that with billionaires. Now, what we're having is a pack of very powerful people that project on themselves that they wanted something that they didn't, because they're caught up in misplaced arousals and trauma bonds, and then they try to perpetuate that projection onwards, and they run into, I can't even say a brick wall, because the dossiers were global and the brick is not that particular wall. So the amount of egoic complexes that we run into with this Ketu Magha, Venus Magha, and Jupiter, the planet of making everything way big, is exponentially profound. At Magha or at Leo, people want to show that they have a heart. If I think about the Me Too was with Rahu Magha. The after Epstein dossiers are with Ketu Magha. Different. Think about 30 million files versus the hashtag Me Too. It happened to me. That was the person. You haven't seen me on that sector or that sector because. Okay, different perspectives of a similar topic. Now, I want to address the complexity about anything that goes through Leo gets in the past we used to say a Me Too thing, now it's an Epstein dossiers purge thing. And for example, in the background there's been a woman that has been receiving the news that she has um, multiple stands in the case against a running president of the United States. It's Donald Trump, and it's an Epstein dossier. It's not a Stormy scandal, which could have been made of the image of something like a Monica Lewinsky. This is an active lawsuit on an Epstein dossier. Um, and that's just one of the things coming that are going in the background. The and the intricacy about the people within those dossiers that have projected onto themselves, because these are men that were raped by men as well. I'm not even talking about the LGBTQ right now, even if we set that one aside for a slight bit of a second. And what they project onto the women that act to discontinue the culture, the tradition, the thing that they grew up on, is not coming from the type of misogynic perception that we would predict. If I take, for example, Donald Trump was married 3 times. He was co-running a business and on an equal standing marriage that went difficult for both sides, and tried to retract to something a bit more traditional in his relations with Melania Trump. And then Melania Trump, of course, as predicted, comes to a phase in her life where her shine is asking to be seen profoundly enough. And speaking just reading synastry, just reading Trump's synastry, Trump's natal chart. Okay, Pluto in the 7th house, which is partners, open enemies, and it also pertains to the big wars. Okay, there was a big exercise happening in the area that knew 2 A bombs. The quest for Greenland that was again reiterated at the summit. All of those things are 7th house things. Ketu Magha discontinues something that was incredibly taboo and did not stem from the way we conceive, let's say, misogyny. Because it was an accepting of dishonoring the feminine that was within the men that went through feminization. And or, when we get into the gender changes that were not necessarily volitional. So every testimony like that, every witness like that, every person that responds completely differently to something that has evidently been a lore is confronting or creating an existential crisis of the psyche and the heart. Because people were used to love feelings juxtaposed to rape within the secret societies. Like I said, again, a person that one does not tend to a petering drop without the various attempts to try to get them to understand the experience of the people within. It's kind of like, hey, this is the emotional, like trying to get that person to relate, or trying to get that, it's like really trying to apply to the heart of the person. And what it creates is a very clear response that is requiring something that is um, a relational pattern of secure attachment. And what we also seen in this wartime is the output of the war culture. It's a very difficult thing on all levels. And the culture of the MAGA, there are attempts, because there is a fixed sign, there are really strong attempts to hold on to the culture that is a non-culture. The hypersexualization as coping mechanism projected onto whoever speaks, done on psychosis level by the offenders. And of course, the psychosis is showing that the primordial attack that they went through as children comes up, but they project it onto the people that speak. And those are people at consultation positions. Complete and utter and total egoic breakdown. Jupiter opposing Pluto is going to be opposing on a yoga or a transit or a complex bisextile transit with a Jupiter opposition Pluto that no living astrologer has seen. And it is unprecedented. We're basically midway into the exercises of a big world war with a political, egoic, military, esoteric, deep state culture that is changing as we speak, while seeing the output of the global Epstein-related Epstein Rolodex dossiers. And in the stress on our coping mechanisms is profound, while we are transforming or going through an existential crisis with Jupiter opposing Pluto, but also Venus Ketu of completely transforming how we tend to these matters of the heart at Leo. I will admit that there were, at the time around the Me Too, there were two women around me. One that didn't speak up enough for people, and she was also harmed, and she was taking the position of the offenders over the position of the people that spoke up. And she had cancer in the throat. Another woman was running into her own issue, and she was harmed as a child, and she was still trying to hold to misconceptions that stemmed from her own issues. And then an outbreak of cancer, I don't remember what type of cancer, happened. um, she even wanted me to do the aromatherapy, and I said no, I'm just an apprentice. um, And if I wouldn't speak, I would probably, and that was at that time I was doing my thesis proposal on the body mind question in the medicines, and ran into cures for cancer that were stopped just when they showed that they're effective, but also the holistic perspective. The Me Too grows, the sexual boundary violation or that culture is cancer generator. We have to speak up to try to alleviate as much as we can inflammation in our bodies and the results that could have practically killed us. And this is not just men but also women that were trying to do their own shadow work, running into an erupting volcano that was suppressed of inflammation that needed to be purged out of the core of the soil. We had the 4th of July with a literal volcanic eruption. That was the Mars-Uranus conjunction in Gemini. Um, and Lilith hasn't even conjoined Pluto yet with Rahu. So not only that, in the secret societies, the threat of inquisition is 12 o'clock from the threat of not speaking up about the boys rape and Ebola. And that, my friends, is how billionaires create pandemics. um, Now here is something very funny. The Mars Maghas have a winner-loser position that is incompatible with Leo. Why? Because Leo is about the heart, and Mars is about severing things or severing from the unjust. And then there's this grand quest for being victorious, but then the question is over what? And this is where Ketu Magha is gonna conjoin several Marses. I was mentioning Donald Trump, the State of Israel. I think also the IDF and the Mossad. And you think about the quest for a picture of victory, and then it's like victory over what? It's in matters of the heart. We are not victorious, but communicative. And I think Venus shows us that in matter of the heart, an actual victory is a win-win. And we see that also with the meteor-related affairs. They become the Epstein dossiers, that the curation and the discontinuation of perpetratory cycles is at the juncture of a win-win. It's not about punishing the rapist, it's about discontinuing a pattern that went rampant due to a design that caused, that did everything to generate an offender pattern, while not allowing that pattern leaking ways into the next cycle. It's a very challenging and it's all felt on a heart, it's all on a heart level. Um, this is why the courtesan cartesan division, that is one of the results of those horrible um, rituals, is negating love at every turn. Because if a person sees, how should I say it? If a person is seeing someone as the Madonna, eventually something is going to go through Leo. They're going to have to face what they would perceive as the whore. A person sees something as the whore, something goes through Leo, and then it's like, oh, the whore, what we thought was the whore has a heart. And we can't see them as the whore anymore. And what's the solution? Is a sexuality that's not rapey. And then we understand that what was seen as the whore, now a person has to deal with the fact that was never a volitional. And then if we go several steps forward, we see that the perpetrator was a perpetuation of a cycle of victimhood, which means that none of the people actually wanted to be in the battlefield. Very relevant for the spirit of our times on a mundane level. Um, Degree 4, which is where Jupiter is going to be in the bisextile with Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, is degree of foundation, of the cornerstone. So there's something we are transforming from the foundation. Now, a lot of people went through traumas at infanthood that have harmed the heart. We evolve, it's true. Um, and this Jupiter is squaring Chiron, Chiron in Taurus, with Venus conjoining Ketu. We are dematerializing a Magha embodiment wound, and Jupiter, the big matters of the heart, how should I say that? Traditionally in a woman's chart, Jupiter is the husband and or the child or the philosophy or the teacher. Now Jupiter is going through a Me Too cycle, which means that is something to do with the partner, is something to do with the husband. As a woman becomes embodied or dematerializes embodiment wounds, and the woman can be the feminine, the husband or the Jupiter or the seventh house ruler, it can also be, in the Virgo ascendant, it can be um, the female partner as well, is their big matters of the heart, let's say, are squaring that. Now the sextile to Uranus, there's going to be, the big benefic in the sign of the heart agreeing with Uranus is going to be a massive topic of radical acceptance that is in tension with healing from embodiment wounds regarding the feminine. There can be oscillations of the ego, particularly with Jupiter opposing Pluto, and it's a part of that purge or healing trajectory. People can come off as jerks when they're not, and then they'll have to kind of like readdress that when they're it's kind of like in the aftermath. Um, but people can show great acts of benevolence as well. Jupiter is also academic studies, recognition, acknowledgement in somebody's academic achievements or legacy or teachings. Um, Jupiter in Leo doesn't humble people, but rather can denote at the good things or the appreciative things, um, or can see also the good things. And of course, it creates a tension with, um, let's say, if you think about the people in Magha, and yet seeing people as people, allowing us to see both the victims and the perpetrators and the people that were both as people, which is the only antidote to while holding it's not about even holding accountable as much as ensuring the discontinuation of the patterns that generated the problem. When we talk about no dehumanization, it extends to almost a spontaneous radical acceptance, and of course, there is a tension here with Chiron in Taurus because it's radically accepting that the person that has an experience of being loved while being raped as a man in a secret society and has this whore Madonna complex created in them and all the creation of the use of psychology and the bodily triggering to create issues of self-value within them, and then they perpetuate that which of course can't win them the the accolades that they used to get in Magha. And the increased awareness of how they try to show the juxtaposition of being loved and being raped, and that was basically their experience, and that's how they learned to express relation. While understanding that that's not something that can generate, this is not something that can be a pattern that is accepted. Okay, if I go back to the Me Too, one of the biggest issues with the Me Too were not the men as much as the women that had to track back. I talked about two cases of literal cancer erupting. One was literally cancer in the throat, another one I don't remember, of two women. One that used to defend the offenders at the expense of the the victims of the situation when she herself was victim too. Throat chakra is very simply put the truth and speaking the truth. And another one, I think it begins with a series of migraines that later, and migraines are very connected to those Epstein disease related, because it's the hemispheres, and that trauma had to do with harming the connection between the hemispheres to make one susceptible to mind control. Um, just that awareness can contribute to remission, or to going from temporary remission to fixed state of remission in people dealing with cancer, which trauma-based context was along these particular lines, and that's way more people than we think. For me, it's a literal, it's, because I'm thinking as I'm speaking, and for me, it's literally profound, because I went through times in my life where I said, hey, if people have cancer, everybody acknowledges the need to have assisted death towards the end, not connecting the dots. Then I think it was around 2007, there was something I had around my chest, and I was like, I don't know if it's cancerous or not, but even if it is, it's about a healing, because I don't see myself doing chemo. It was 2.5 decades ago, so there was literally something that was like a skin fungi around my literal heart. Yeah, Ken. Um, just the things that I've been addressing in the past decade show that what was growing also medically within me was beyond lethal. And I only understand that as I speak now, Moon 22 in Aries. Um, I understood that at the Me Too, but now it's like an even more profound. My knowledge, well, in matters of my thesis proposal, and and the petering drop, and um, the seven I've been carrying since infanthood. That is beyond. It's beyond the jury. It's beyond jurisdiction. It's beyond culture. It's beyond. Is simply my life. Um, and I understand it as I speak. Like I said, everything going through Leo is heartfelt. It's dramatic, not because it's scripted, but because it's authentic. Um, Moon trine in Lilith. If we go a little bit forward, 1 week forward. Yeah, Venus will already have conjuncted um, yeah, towards the end of July. Gonna have the big opposition. Oh, Venus is going to be 11 degrees. Virgo in some of the days. Um, Mercury going all the way, doing the journey of Jupiter retrograde. And moon opposing Saturn. Mars in Gemini. What a terrible time for Mars in Gemini. For Mars to be in Gemini. um, and Mars in Gemini, Mercury in Cancer is like um, the painful issues of the heart that the coping mechanisms of Magha no longer work for.